Hi, Elaine. Welcome to Make It Matter podcast. I am so excited to have you here to talk about all things your journey, what you're working on the women's health space, and the work of Bettii and what you're trying to build. So thank you so much for joining me.
Lovely to be here.
Two Scottish ladies talking about women's health and
Yes,
menstruation,
we're going to go on for a long time.
all the stuff in between. I know, I'm like, how long are we gonna go? Let's see. So before we get into Bettii and your work on women's health, it'd be really good to understand more about you and what brought you here to do the work that you're doing around women's health, your kind of career journey, your personal journey that led you to build a women's health tech company.
God, where do you start? So I ran a couple of companies in the engineering sector. I was chief operating officer for one, then went on to be sort of acting CEO during a sale. It was the oil and gas. It was a very, very different sector. We came out of that, went into another small one. I was fortunate to be asked to come back and run another company. It was a small startup, so it wasn't a big company, R&D engineering, and it was really exciting, really interesting. It was like running a startup company, even though it was private equity money. So it's like the most comfortable startup you've ever known about because you were paid from the day one, and you had access to, engineers and accountants and a board literally from day one. So, I mean, as I ran that one, it was really, really good fun. I really enjoyed it. We were very much involved in accelerators and incubators, and it was just something I thought, actually, I really quite like this. I didn't have a big team. It was myself and one, two others. There's all these possibilities. It was so exciting. Terrifying at the same time. Not as terrifying as completely going out on your own, as I've learned now. But it was really good fun. And when that sort of came to an end, I was mentoring a couple of girls actually from Edinburgh Way who had a spin out from university looking at period pads, reusable period pads. And I knew nothing about this sector whatsoever, nothing. Didn't use reusables. I knew one of my friends used a cup, hadn't really got into the reusable side of things, but I had become allergic to tampons. My body was just shoving these things back out. As soon as I put them up, it went, no thanks, and shoved it back out. And I became quite uncomfortable with them. I actually became, they were itchy. It was a horrible experience. So I was using pads and thinking, God, this is awful. I hate this. Started talking to the girls, started to talk to other people. I started to learn a lot more about reusables. And whenever I do try and mentor a company, I will go in and try and learn about that industry because I think it's quite important to understand sort of the sector in which they're going to work if you're going to try and help them. And I thought, my God, this is huge. This industry is really massive. It's growing. This is something that's quite exciting and quite different. I love to learn. I love to see opportunity. I realised this was an industry we were right at the beginning of as well. Started to talk to friends and all of a sudden discovered that I was really out of the mix. Everybody else seemed to have got onto reusables way before I was. Started talking learning about period pants and then cups and discs. At the same time, started to think about reusables in general. So started to look at incontinence. Big thing, obviously, male and female. My mum had or still does have urinary incontinence. My brother at the time had Parkinson's and had developed urinary incontinence as well. And talking to him, he was like, the Parkinson's is bad enough, but the urinary incontinence, he was in his mid-50s. He said that's 100 times worse. There's just this lack of dignity and having to wear these big bulky pads and just hated it. And my mum would always talk about it. And the thing with the disposable pads is that because you're wearing them all the time as well, they're rubbing the skin, the chemicals that they use are interacting with the skin often tears, breaks, bleeds. So invariably, if you're getting these things issued by the NHS, they hand you over the pads and then they hand you over steroid cream for infections.
Wow.
So I started to talk to them about reusables and the question, well, how do you clean them? How do you wash them? So when we first started Bettii, I was looking at actually incontinence and periods, but from the what we call absorbable perspective. How could we create something that absorbed the blood and absorbed the blood, not the urine? But then what do you do to wash them when you're away from home or even in the home? Because people didn't want to put reusables in the washing machine. There's some religious things with regards to that in some instances, but other people just don't want to put a heavily bloodied item in the washing machine. Plus, if you don't put them in the washing machine and you hold them, they can start to smell and not be great. So it's something you need to do quite quickly. And the same with urine. You're not going to wash a urine-soaked item, or you tend not to wash a urine-soaked item with your normal washing. So I was, as a young kid, I should have been an engineer when I was younger because I was quite obsessed when you go to the swimming pool with that little thing. You know that thing you put your swimming cozy in, and then you hold the lid down. I was that, yeah, I was that weird kid that was hanging about taking people's pants off them, going, "Ooh, I really like that."
For you.
Yeah, exactly. I loved it. I just thought it was amazing. So I did start thinking about that. I think, well, is there something that we could do for the home? Is there something we could do for away from home? So it was from that we started to build, or I started to build the idea of Bettii and trying to create something that we could actually give to the general public, which has kind of gone away from me and my startup story, but you can tell I'm not very good at talking about history because I'm 100% in today and tomorrow and the next.
But do you think though that because it's a big journey kind of from oil and gas sector to women's health, and what do you think you've taken from that? Maybe it's because you were running almost a startup, and then you thought, like, from running that in the oil and gas sector to going, I'm going to go and start something on my own. How did that work for you? What took you from that to kind of learning about the kind of reusables, and then going, actually, I'm going to start a business on my own and build this?
It was a really natural progression, actually, because the last company we were involved with was very small. So it felt like it was my own company. There's an immense freedom as well when you're running your own company. You don't have to answer to a whole bunch of folk. I'd come out of a big company, smallish, sort of 40 to 80 odd people across the different years. And oh my God, that was exhausting. Can't control who you work with. It's lovely to be able to do that now. You don't have that person that's really annoying sitting in the corner and just going, oh, well, that's just so and so. He's like that to everybody. No, he's not.
Yeah.
Get rid of him. If you hire him, get rid of him. You don't have to have those conversations anymore. So, yeah, I'd been working from home for probably a couple of years by the time I decided to just step out and actually run my own business. It kind of was a no-brainer. I just didn't want to go back to being an employee. I really didn't. I realized that I really liked what I was doing. I really liked not just the freedom, but the responsibility. I loved the creativity. I loved to be able to sit down. And it was funny because you do start to learn your own strengths. And it's one of the biggest things when you start up a company. If you're going to start up a company, I think the first thing you really need to do is sit down and find out who you are, because that startup is going to challenge you and your personality, your resilience, just every aspect of who you are as an individual and who you are as a leader of your company, and as an innovator, and as somebody who can look to the future, and as somebody who's got to persuade people. And it challenges every aspect of your personality.
Yeah.
And I think being a wee bit older as well, I'd gone through a lot and kind of was quite firm in who I was, but still learning every single day, to be fair. And yeah, it just felt completely natural. And women's health is just an area, I'm women. I've got health issues, as we all do. My friends have all got health issues. I went on my first feminist march with my mother when I was 13 years old. I had 3 jobs when I was 12 years old. So yeah, I've always worked. I've always had a element of control. I've been in a position of responsibility, and I always seemed across my career going to what I call empty desks. So you'd go in and somebody say, "Oh, we used to have somebody there. It was a disaster," or "We need something to happen in this position, and we're desperate. Can you?" And you've got till tomorrow to fix it.
Fix it.
And I think that is somewhere that I'm quite good at, or something I'm quite good at. I
Yeah.
can come in, work it pretty quickly what's wrong. I've got fairly good clarity and, right, we need to go this way, this way, this way. But knowing that you have contingencies, because you always have to have contingencies. Working in the grey is something that you 100% have to be comfortable with,
Yeah.
because, there is no black and white in a small business. There really isn't.
Yeah. You've got to get stuck into a bit of everything by the sounds of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then going on that journey to go, okay, I'm just thinking if there was another woman listening thinking, I want to start my own thing, or I maybe want to try
Don't
and.
do it. Don't do it.
You're not the first person that said
Steal
that to
money. Do
me.
anything. Beep. I sometimes would love to do that. Honest to God. No, don't do it.
I
No,
know
do it, do
you
it.
do, and of course, you have the days where you're like, "This is tough," right? Like, it's just a lot. Well, my first question was, what in terms of that reflecting on yourself and what you're good at and where your strengths are, how did you go about doing that? Or was that like a process of going through jobs and work and figuring that out? Or was there something you did that kind of enabled you to get that clarity and then work out how you take the stuff you're good at to Betty, if you see what I mean?
Yeah, I do actually. I mean, I think when I was quite young, I mean, I do think there's a personality element to this. You know, you are somebody that either reflects or doesn't reflect, but I do think you can also learn to be somebody who reflects. And I do think it's incredibly important. I don't practice mindfulness. I don't do any of that stuff. That's not necessarily who I am. But ever since I was young, and it was driven primarily by my mum, she would always say, if you're in a job, have a look at what you're good at and what you enjoy. Now, what you're good at and what you enjoy is another thing. They don't always come together. So I'm good at sales, but I don't particularly enjoy sales. And I'm talking hardcore sales. Obviously, in a company, like a startup, that's all you do all day long. It's slightly different. But I was always given sales roles because, strangely enough, I can chat, and go on with folk, as you may have noticed. But so I was always given it, but I didn't really like it, because there was no creativity around it. Very often it was we need 10 of those and 20 of those.
Mhm.
So yeah, you had to figure out what you are good at, so because you can learn about your skills in that, but then what you really enjoy. And what my mum used to say, and I say it to loads of people, especially when they're younger and moving around jobs, try and make the next job increase the bits that you like and decrease the bits that you don't.
Yeah.
And if you always have that in your head, then you're always looking at your job as well. You're not just accepting it and going, oh, this is dreadful, or why am I doing this? You're going, right, this is not where I want to be, but I really like this, this, and this, and I'm going to learn a lot about that. And then I'll move on. And also don't stay too long if it is rubbish, but sometimes you have to stay and go through hell also to find it. And I think in my generation as well, you would work 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. It was complete exploitation looking back. It really was. But you do learn a lot about yourself. You can learn how much you can work without collapsing. You would party hard and work hard, and I loved it. It's great. But you became very aware of what your capabilities were. And then if you kept that mindset of can I increase them and can I increase them and can I increase them? And I think for many years as well, I sorted out other people's problems. I was always the fixer. And I think that is actually quite a common female role to end up in. I would rise through companies really quickly, not deliberately. I was never particularly ambitious. I never really knew what I wanted to do. I didn't set out to work in business. In fact, sitting behind a desk was my idea of hell in an office. That's not what I wanted to do.
Mm.
But I didn't really know what it was I did want to do. So I was good at it. I would get opportunities and I stayed there. But eventually you sort of thought, I'm working for a lot of people that are rubbish. They're really nice people, or some of them were, but some of them were. I tended to find that I was doing their job for them.
Yeah.
But also being female, you were lower down, you were earning less, you had less, responsibility. And that started to change in the latter years. Especially through oil and gas. That's a difficult industry to be in. It's very male dominated. It can be quite sexist, no surprise. But yeah, I did learn an awful lot from it, working with great people, working with not so great people. But yeah, I don't know that everybody's different. For me, I didn't sit down and say, right, write a list. But I think it's something that goes on in your head all the time. And I do it every single day. Even now, you have to constantly think, what's working well for me here? What isn't working well for me here? How can I improve upon this? You have to recognize the bits you don't like because they're the bits you tend to avoid and stick back from. And actually, sometimes that's what you really need to do in your business. And when you are in a tiny, tiny business of, just you and one or two others, you don't have the choice. You don't have the luxury of saying, well, I'll just ignore that.
Yeah.
You have to go headlong into it. And the more that you know about yourself and the more you realize, actually, I'm avoiding that, or I didn't make a good decision there. If you don't do that, I don't actually know how you can run a small company successfully. But yeah, and that comfort in the grey is incredible. I talked to some friends and they're just like, I don't know how you do that because there is no black and white. We talked about this earlier.
Yeah.
There's no particular answer to things. People talk about failure, but whenever we talk about failure, it tends to be big failure. You know, like your company failed, or you had a massive product failure or service failure. I don't. You have to get used to failure every single day. I fail every single day. I decide to talk to this person when I think halfway through it, actually, I'm not going to get anywhere with you. You're not who I need to talk to. You decide to go to an event and it turns out to be useless, or you don't go to an event and it turns out to be great, or you make a decision on spending money somewhere and you reflect on it and you think, I don't think I got value for money there. I don't think I got as much as I could do. And it's not about making a mistake. You will do this all day long. If you're going to start up a company, you asked about a woman looking at watching this and starting up a company, you have to get really comfortable with the fact that you're not wrong, you're not stupid, and the mistakes you make, everyone makes them. It's the fact that you look at them and think, not doing that again, learning from that, and I'm going to change.
I really resonate with a lot of what you're saying. Like my journey I've not kind of built my own business as such, but I've left the corporate world and went into freelancing and consulting and kind of become
Yeah,
my own boss and had that freedom, which has been so refreshing. But I really resonate with that being a fixer point in corporate, where if you just get shit done, you kind of just get opportunities because
yeah,
you're the person that they can rely on and go to fix stuff
yeah,
and
yeah,
do stuff. But there's so much, what I found is transitioning from that, and that gives you great opportunities to grow in your career and progress up the career ladder. But there's a safety net with that I hadn't quite
definitely.
appreciated how big that safety net was for me. That kind of there is a bit of a right and wrong in corporate. Yeah, you can make a little bit mistakes here and there, but it's not going to be the end of your business or the end of your personal brand or
Yeah,
no. Whereas you come out and you go out on your own and it's on me now, like
yeah,
for this to succeed. And
yeah.
that's quite a mindset shift. That's I've
It
struggled.
definitely is. I watched what do you call that program? It's the SAS program. Are You Tough Enough? And there's a guy on it, Foxy, and he was on another program we were watching, the Sunday morning cookery program, whatever it is. And they were asking him about what his toughest situation he's been in. And he was talking about the jungle, the desert, and he's got some sort of, I'm going to say, North Pole type, wintry type thing going on just now. And they asked him which one was the hardest, and he talked through the sort of merits and the challenges of each location. And he said, but for me, the one I've just done, the winter-based one, Alaska or wherever it was, he said was horrific. It's the worst thing. And this guy's, ex-SAS or SBS, can't remember which he is. Throughout the years, he's been in immense, horrendous situations. And I said, well, why was that your hardest? He said, because I could tap out at any time. And I think when you're in corporate, always in the back of your head is, I could probably just leave. Now, we don't. We tend to stick in far too long when you really should leave sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the opposite. People leave far too quickly. But for the rest of us are just getting on with it. It does sit there as your alternative. It's your option. And
Mhm.
that is your safety net. You might worry, I might not find something. It might be equally as rubbish. I might not get paid as well, but it's still an option when it's just you and your company and you've made that decision publicly. I'm
Yeah.
doing this, there's that pressure, but also my brain goes, well, what else am I going to do?
Yeah.
And you have to be so unbelievably passionate about it. I genuinely don't know how you do this if it's not 100% your passion. And there are days you hate it, and there's days say, beep, Tesco, here I come.
Yeah.
But it never is real. Whereas in corporate, you can get to the real, I'm leaving, I've resigned, and you feel this. I think if you turned around with your own business and left your own business and resigned, you wouldn't feel, well, maybe if you were in a really bad place, but if you just tapped out too quickly,
Mm.
you wouldn't feel relief. Whereas when you resign off in a bad job, you do feel relief because you get that freedom. But we've grabbed the freedom, you've grabbed the freedom, I've grabbed it. And in some ways, it becomes your own jail.
Yeah.
It
But
does. But it's also, as long as you truly believe in what you're doing and you constantly challenge yourself. I've seen false beliefs so many times. And I think there's one of the challenges, I know I'm going off at a tangent here, but one of the challenges, because I work with a lot of other companies, startup companies, and women with lots of ideas and whatnot, and they're amazing, absolutely amazing people. Always underestimate their capabilities. But very often what happens is somebody comes up with an idea and everybody tells them it's wonderful, and they can win awards left, right, and centre. And I've done it. I've won awards left, right, and centre, but nobody's really looking at the business plan. And I've
Yeah.
looked at a number of companies that come to me and thought, this isn't a business. It's a lovely idea, but it's either not a business or you're not going to make it a business because your passion is not there, your drive is not there. And that's okay, because if they want to just make it a lifestyle business, nothing wrong with that. There's millions of lifestyle business out there that give great products and services, innovations to the world. But it will only go so far. And if that's what you want, and that's the first thing you must decide if you step out on your own, what's a yes and what's a no. And it's exhausting, and I am absolutely knackered, and you want to have a break all the time, but your brain never switches off, which can be in itself quite difficult. But as I say, back to the whole reason for doing what you're doing and walking away from corporate, your brain, I used to take, what we would call shitograms at 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night, just where I was going to go to sleep from my boss. He would be asking for, I need such and such by 7 a.m. And I'm
Yeah.
like, it's 11 o'clock at night, and
Yeah.
you don't need that, and it's ridiculous. Or they were just having a bad day and they were being really horrible to everybody, or somebody's complained, or somebody's upset. You just think, oh, so that's in your head, but not in a good way.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm going to sleep and I literally do dream about it all the time. It's ridiculous. But it's a good thing because it's helping me solve problems.
Yeah. It's a different all-consuming
It's a completely different, it's
project
all
because it's
consuming something that you direct and you control.
you're in
Nobody,
control. That's the
yeah,
difference. Yeah. So let's talk about Betty then in more detail. And I would love as well for us to use this to talk a little bit more about all the amazing, incredible, and some more difficult things that you've learned about women's health, because we've had some great conversations that I'd like to bring to life. Because you've obviously been on a journey to learn a lot yourself in building Betty. But first, let's talk about Betty. So for anyone listening, what is Betty, the product, and also I guess the vision?
women are watching this, you often get you to ask for your elevator pitch. Now, your elevator pitch is going to change no matter, depending on who you talk to, right? And as you build your business, it's like getting comfortable with something you're wearing. You sort of, you try things out in your head, you try things out when you come out your mouth, you think, is that right? Is that what I want? And now, I've been on this for a few years now, and it changes all the time. I think I'm getting closer to what I truly want Betty as a brand to be. Now, quite definitely a women's health brand, but I look at a lot of women's health because I work in a lot of femtech, and there's lots of amazing research going on, and they're creating diagnostic tampons. Or I was talking to a company this morning, they've got the PMDD neuromodulator, and the guys at Samphire, amazing. And I sort of slightly jealous of it, thinking, I can't sit down and do that kind of medical research. But at the same time, you think, well, actually, what is it you are doing? And when I talk to women, and I talk to them all the time, as you know, we're constantly talking to women and talking about health, whether it's your health, your friends, your family, or other women. And there are lots of amazing products and services, and we're building one ourselves, which I'll talk about in a minute. But women themselves need help today and tomorrow and the next day. Going back to my feminist march when I was 13, we marched because we tried to get something to change. We wanted to highlight, we wanted decisions made, we were frustrated. And I talked about it on Women's Health all the time, and the frustration about women's health, the lack of research that's happened in women's health, the fact that half the drugs that you take were never tested on your body is incredible. I tell people all the time about drugs that, I think we talked one, I think it was 1984 or something, I can't remember exactly. And it was a drug to look at the effect of estrogen on, I'm sure it was post-menopausal women, and the impact on their uterus and their breasts. And it was, I'm going to get the numbers wrong, but it was something like 5,000 people were tested, 5,000 or something were tested, and not a single one was male. It was a female. They were all male. Yeah.
On postmenopausal women?
Yeah, they were all male. But and that's because women weren't allowed to be involved in medical research. Well, yeah, but now that's different. It was
Yeah.
changed quite a number of years ago. However, they didn't, they don't mandate the numbers of women that need to be in trials. So fast forward to, I think it was 2015, there was a company in America. In America, I've obviously got the FDA, which you'll manage all the drugs. It's Federal Drugs Agency that you have to get approval from them to release anything. So a company called ADA is a female Viagra, did all their studies, put the information towards the FDA. The FDA came back and said, we feel you need to do a further study. You need to look at the impact of taking your drug with alcohol. Sex, alcohol, very often they go together,
Yes.
especially Viagra and whatnot. And you think, okay, that's a sensible ask. So the company went back out, tested 25 people. When you think 25 people is not an awful lot, but nonetheless, at least they went and tested 25 people. 23 of them were male.
For female Viagra.
They tested 23 out of 25 were male to test the impact of alcohol on taking Viagra on women.
On women. Wow. It's just illogical, right? Like that's just
Completely. It's because
yeah.
we're meant to be small men.
Yeah. Well,
We're too complex to study. Our hormones are too difficult, which don't get me wrong, hormones are challenging. They really are. We still don't understand them. So if you're trying to release a drug and you have to take that into account at all the different stages of a female's life, then it is challenging, but it's 100% profit over doing the correct thing. It's not right. I think it's something like some crazy figure, like 70% of the drugs that get withdrawn from the commercial market, from your hand and my hand, are because of the impact that those drugs have had on women once they've released them.
yeah. It's crazy, yeah.
Yeah, we are just a petri dish basically. We just shove stuff out, see if it works on them. If it doesn't, bring it back in.
Yeah. And then I was also speaking to a friend recently who, well, she's had her baby now, she was pregnant. And what I found wild is there's so many, when you're pregnant, there's so many things you don't know if you can take them or not. So they just say don't take anything because they don't know what the effect they're going to have on women. They're not testing any of it. So she's just kind of like, she has to guess when she's pregnant if it's okay for her to take some stuff or not take some
Well,
stuff.
even when they do, even the lab testing on animals, which, obviously there's a big controversy about, and understandably, but in medical research, they always use male lab rats as well. They don't even use female lab rats. So we are completely held in the dark, and there is that massive frustration. And I think it's because of social media and because women are talking a lot more about it and women are demanding a lot more, quite rightly. I often find when I say women are demanding, it's a ridiculous phrase. It's a right
Mhm.
to know about your body. It's a right to have adequate health care. It's a right to be taken seriously. It's a right to feel better and not in pain constantly. It is a right not to hear the words, you're a woman, just put up with it. It's just what women have to go through. Absolute rubbish. And we get so used to it that we say women are demanding, like you shouldn't do that. It's rude to do that, especially in the British culture, don't demand anything. But it's because of the situation we've been put in through our healthcare that we feel we have to demand or shout or scream. But it's hard for women in the street to do that constantly. We just get tired, we get fed up, we turn to social media, which social media it has a load of rubbish in it. It's totally unregulated. So a lot of the supplements, a lot of the things people are telling folk to do, it's just no medical research, clinical efficacy whatsoever. At the same time, there are some amazing people trying to get clarity out there. But because we are so tired and
Mhm.
so exhausted and fighting against the lack of truth all the time, Trump is obviously a big player in truth or falsehoods, and that's come through into our society now, into our psyche, that even when we now do come across somebody who seems reasonable, reliable, researched, medical, trusted, your algorithms on your social media will throw up something tomorrow that will cast doubt on that person's opinion. And that person's opinion can be 100% correct, but you're now so overwhelmed by attitudes and opinions that I think not just women, but everybody is getting into that stage of we just sit in a stage of confusion all the time.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. Yeah, one thing I'll tell you, this is good. The next thing, like collagen is good, collagen is bad. It's kind of like how are we supposed to know? And I think what I struggle with personally is that as you know a bit about my story, but like I went to the doctor when I was really young with extreme period pain. The doctor put me onto the pill. At the time, I think back then it wasn't even a thing to really talk about the side
No,
effects
it
of the
wouldn't have
pill. They
been.
just gave it
No.
out like sweeties, right? It was like,
Yeah.
take the pill, that'll stop it. And
Yep.
at that point, I was in so much pain. I'm like, anything to just stop it. So I would take the pill for 10 plus years, often back to back. So I didn't have a period, didn't have pain, could function in life. It was great. Like, there's a lot of negativity around the pill, and I appreciate there's lots of side effects. For me, during that time, I didn't personally notice specific side effects, kind of skin issues or anything like that. I was like, I'm just not in pain anymore, right? But then,
That's a key thing.
yeah. But then, since then, and me stopping and trying to actually get to the root cause of why I'm in the pain, I look back and I go, oh my God, I was 16. Why are you handing out the pill, changing hormones at that age and not having that really informed conversation with me? So it's almost a bit like this. A lot of women, maybe me included, have lost a bit of trust in the system.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
where do you
absolutely.
go to find who you
Yeah,
can trust to give you the right information and rebuild?
absolutely. And it's something that we hear all the time. And, I know you asked me originally, what's Betty all
I
about?
don't, yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, we can go for tangents because it's women's health. You can literally talk about this for weeks. It is that gap. So my view of what Betty is about trying to plug gaps. I'm incredibly practical. So if I see something and, if a chair's in my way, I'm going to pick it up and move it out the way. I'm not just going to hit the chair and go back and forward. It's that old adage. And I think I hear all these stories all the time. So how can we as a brand sort them? How can we make it better for you to have, or the younger you, the 16-year-old you? How can we make that experience better? Now, I don't have a magic wand. I can't fix everything. But I'll sort of sit down constantly and think, well, what can I actually do? We created Betty, the menstrual cup and disc washer, or we're in the process of creating her, because I saw a gap in a market that said women want choice of period products. They want choice of something that's healthier for them. There's been so many reports on toxicity, toxic chemicals, toxic metals in tampons. People say, "Oh, don't get overly excited about this as toxins and everything." Yes, but you don't shove them up your vagina for 8 hours a day and leave the threads behind you, the fibers behind when you take them out. But also, and nobody's actually doing the research to see what the impact of this stuff is. We're just being told not to panic. Women don't want that anymore. They want clarity, they want honesty, they want openness, and they want choice. So when we started to look at cups and discs and said, right, these are amazing, massive following, huge, huge growth worldwide for cups and discs. But major problem, it was highlighted by a UN sustainability report that when women go outside the house, they've got nowhere to wash them cleanly, safely, easily. So that's why we came up with Betty the washer. So it's an installed washer put in things like Heathrow or Vinny or hopefully all these places, once we actually create it. So it's in design just now. And that's what Betty, the product, is. And that's where she started. But as we've been on this journey, talking to people like yourself, hearing the stories, having issues, myself, family, wider team, sat down and said, right, what else can we do? And that's where we came out. And I know you know this very well because you've been helping us with it, is with Betty Presents. We wanted to bring women closer and to understand their bodies. We want to teach them more about the common conditions that women go through. Things like pain, is that linked to endometriosis? Is it linked to PCOS or adenomyosis or fibroids? We're looking to talk about PMDD this morning. We always want to talk about menopause. We want to talk about bone strength, heart strength, breast strength, or health, whatever you want to call it. Women do not understand the basics of this stuff. And we're so knackered nowadays, and going back to all the social media stuff, we're doom scrolling all the time. And we're hiding, I think, in it as well, because we are tired, so we hide. We can't really cope with much. And then women do have all these health issues, and we rarely have one health issue.
Yeah.
So people talk about, for example, the menopause. The menopause isn't just the menopause. The menopause is 40 things going wrong with your body, you know, and even worse, perimenopause is 40 things going wrong with your body and you still have your periods. Who decided on that one? It's like, what kind of fresh hell is this? Why would you do this to me? I didn't really do anything bad in my life that I know of. It's a horrendous period, but it is one you learn a lot about your body. So we looked at all this kind of stuff and said, that's why we want Betty Presents. We want to create an annual event in Scotland that women can come along to. They can learn about the bodies from doctors, from clinicians, from specialists. We've got fitness experts, we've got health experts, we've got clinicians. Listen to the talks, speak to them afterwards, and then go around all the stalls. We're trying to pull in all these companies that have got innovative products and services that the women in the street don't know about, but should know about. And we want to give them a platform. A lot of them are female-based, female-run, female, innovated. We want to give them that platform to talk to other women so that another 16-year-old, when they go to the doctor, aren't just told, right, here's the solution to your symptom.
Yeah.
We constantly want to push towards, can you find the root cause? And we have a lot of empathy with doctors as well, the NHS. It's a really, really difficult place to work in. There are amazing people working in the NHS. There are also some not amazing people, but that's in the same in any profession across the board. But generally, they go in with the right attitude and they go in with a good heart. The system kind of wears them down, gives them 5-10 minutes to make a decision with very limited information. So a lot of also what we're trying to do is to teach women how to engage with the NHS, how to engage with a healthcare provider, how to make their job as easy as possible so
Yeah.
that you get the answers and the journey that you need, and to recognise how difficult it is for you to be a patient, but also how difficult it is sometimes for a doctor or a healthcare provider to treat you as an individual, especially when women go in and we're such a mixed bag of issues. It can be quite difficult to work it out. And that's why I'm massively in favour of women learning as much as they can about themselves and about their anatomy and listening to their anatomy, tracking their health, tracking their conditions, and totally and utterly believing in their body
Yeah.
and how they feel. I know you did that. You spent time learning about your body, learning about your symptoms, tracking it, so that when you go to the doctor, you can go, actually, I really know what I'm talking about here. I
Yeah.
might not know the clinical side of it, the medical side. I can't give my symptoms a name, a clinical name, but I know they're real and I know they're impacting my life and I know I need you to take some steps to help me.
Yeah.
So there's that get together with the NHS at some point.
Yeah, and it's kind of bridging that gap between the two because I think it's quite easy to just be angry and annoyed at doctors because they're not giving us the solution we want, right? But our bodies are so complex, as you say, like everything's interlinked, but then we also have we're never the same day to day throughout the week, right? We change
Absolutely.
months. So that's the biggest learning for me in tracking everything. Tracking can feel a bit overwhelming initially, but even just doing small things of like, how do I feel today? Am I like got great energy or am I a bit lower energy today? Even doing that for 1 month was game changing for me just to see how
Yeah,
my energy moves throughout the month, but as well as my kind of symptoms. Um, it's crazy that almost I feel I was taught to outsource responsibility for my body to somebody
yeah,
else because I was just if something was wrong, I go to the doctor, right? And that's just what we're taught. That was ingrained into me. And actually as soon as I started to think, why don't I try and understand what's going on for me?
yeah.
It was crazy. Like had headaches on the exact same day every month. I would never have known that if I didn't start to track
Exactly.
with my body. So there's definitely something to be said for that, but then finding a way to lean into the medical system and bridge that maybe that gap that exists in terms of empathy on both sides from
Yeah,
patient to doctor.
yeah. And we have got something in the pipeline that we're going to work on that actually. There's something we've
Great.
got an idea to try and bridge that gap
Yeah.
because I'm confident in talking to doctors and the healthcare system, and I've been in and out of that for years now with gynecological problems. And even I've come out, a mile and a half sit out of that going, I actually, I don't know. I seem to ask loads of questions, but I got nothing back, or I'm completely confused. I think, and that's so frustrating as somebody who's like, learn, ask the questions, to come away. And that's happened more than once and go, I don't know what's going on. I spoke to a doctor recently. I asked them to call me to explain something and for me to discuss my options. And what I realized halfway through the conversation, and intellectually I knew this before I spoke to them, but it was so clear. That doctor was lovely, really nice, taking her time out to phone me, really lovely. Female, I just made the assumption she would know about hormones, she would know about gynecological issues. She had absolutely no knowledge. She is a GP, general practitioner. She is not a specialised hormone specialist. She's not a gynecologist. And unless she has left med school and gone on and taken further studies and specialised or has a particular interest in certain areas, she will always just be a general person in that topic. And the same with things like nutrition or bone strength or pain. If that's not a particular area of interest for them, they're not going to be, they're not going to have that much knowledge on it. So yes, you go outsourcing your problem to them and you get very little back. And then you go into a system. First and foremost, you have to get them to push you into the system and not just hand you some ibuprofen and tell you to go away, because they always start with the most obvious. Oh, we'll do a few blood tests and that. And you feel deflated, and we constantly feel deflated. Women make 15 million more visits to the doctors, to the healthcare system in their lifetime. They live longer than men, but in poorer health. And that's something we are trying to change. But I'm a big, big believer in, if you want to change something, start with yourself, because the system is huge. You, me, anybody around us right now, we can't change the NHS. We can't find billions of pounds to plummet into it. We don't have that capability. We can go and we can talk to counsellors or politicians. We can make stands. We can write, letters, whatever. And we should all do that, or whoever's capable of it can do it. But on a day-to-day basis, the only person that's going to help you help your health is you. And that's why things like the Bettii Presents that we've got going, it's a starter for 10. We can't cover everything. It's one day, but it's so important that we make that an annual event, maybe extend it to 2 days. And it's a, what was it? Point in the sand, stick in the sand. I never know what that is. Mark in the sand. There's a sand and there's a mark in it, and we're standing in it. And we'll say, right, this is what we're doing today. Where can we take this? And for us, go back to what do I think Bettii is? We'll eventually answer that question. I like to think it's we look at gaps. We try and find a gap that we have the capability of trying to plug, and then we look at other people who have done the same thing. So part of you having all the stalls at the event, I'm trying to pull in all the companies with exciting innovations. It's quite hard to get them to Scotland, but if we can, we will. Pull them in because they're plugging a gap that they see, whether that's hormones or blood testing or neuromodulators or whatever it is, menstrual cups that are amazing, or teaching, or whatever. They plug their own gaps, then we go and plug other gaps. And one of the main gaps is for us that we're that conduit between women and access to answers.
Solutions, answers, knowledge. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll bring our own cup and disc forward, forward as a product, and there's other products in the pipeline as well that I've got my eye on in the future. But in terms of that kind of all-encompassing, you get caught in a bubble, especially on LinkedIn. There'll be a post on this later today. You get caught in this bubble that everything you see coming through your LinkedIn or your socials is about innovations, about solutions, about products. You think, oh, it's amazing. Then I step outside my bubble, I talk to my friends, and they go, oh, I don't know about that. Oh, I've never heard that. Oh, no. And they're still confused scrolling on social media. And I think, no, the other thing about a lot of these products that are coming through in healthcare or femtech is that if you go back into the history of female funding, female investment, we do get a lot less funding than we should. It is just fact. All the facts are out there. It's very, very poor. The percentage of funds that go to female-founded and female-led companies as opposed to male-founded and male-led companies. So it means that we have to be more creative with the funds that we do have. And one area that very often falls by the wayside or is given a lot less funding is your marketing, your PR budgets. So a lot of the femtech solutions and products are not, in my mind, getting to the women in the street as quickly as they should do. So if we can play even a very small part in helping other companies get their personal product and service message out, and that can be charities as well. Endometriosis UK, for example, amazing charity. They've got a free nurse helpline. So you can phone them, you can talk to them, you can book it on the site, you can talk to them, you can talk about, do I have endometriosis? And if they think you do, they will write you a letter on Endometriosis UK headed paper that you can print off and take to your doctor. And that says, we've assessed this woman, we think she has endometriosis. That's a free service. So we'll promote that just as much as we'll talk about Day's diagnostic tampon, or say Samfire's neuromodulator for PMDD. We want to bring all that together. And in the hope that somewhere along the line, somebody starts talking about ours as well.
Amazing. Yeah, there's so much. It's so, whenever I speak to you, there's so many new things that are coming out. Like you're like, have you heard of this? Have you heard of this? You've got this thing you stick in your head and it'll like track your brain.
And they're coming out all the time. Yeah, the bone scanners, yeah, yeah. We'll hopefully have a handheld bone scanner. Now, I don't know anything about it, but my clinicians are still looking at it. It's a company that they're working with. But yeah, if you want to go and get a DEXA scan at the moment, it will cost you about 450 quid roughly. And I'm all for that. I think every woman should have a DEXA scan at some point in their life. When you turn 50, you get your bowel thing through the post that you send away your sample to have a look at your bowel cancer. I think DEXA scans for women, you should have that free on the NHS, full stop, at least once, but we don't. And it's probably never going to happen because they're expensive. However, and especially you've got the rise of the weight loss drugs as well and the impact that's going to have on bone strength and bone density. I think we've got a real big problem waiting in the wings for women especially. So again, we really want to start looking at that. Lots of pros, quite a few cons as well. So we just need information, we need clarity, we need evidence to talk about stuff. And the bone scanners is one. So yeah, there's apparently a handheld bone scanner that's come out. Yeah, these things are coming out all the time, and that's where, working in this industry, you meet women that come away with just the most amazing innovations. It can be something really small that's just fantastic. You think, why has nobody thought of that? All the way through to, I see neuromodulators or diagnostics and at-home testing is the big thing now. There's a lot of hormone at-home testing. We need to look into that a wee bit more because there needs to be, I think, a wee bit more education. They should go hand in hand with some of the products that we deliver to make sure that people are using them properly, that they're getting the right information. But certainly the future, I believe, is definitely there's going to be a mix between at-home tracking, at-home diagnostics, and people will be paying for it. Whether that's right or wrong, it's the way that it's going because people want answers. And, so if I want a cholesterol test, I can go to doctors and get it. I can sometimes go to a pharmacy and get it. But if I don't have the time and it's cost me 20 quid just to get it into the house and I just do it at home and yeah, that answer comes to me digitally as well and I can track it myself, then that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah. And that was just what I was going to touch on. I hope over time, like some of these new innovations are, as you would expect, it's still quite expensive, and it's only a certain portion of the market
They
that
can
are going to be
afford.
able to
Yeah,
afford to
definitely.
access these in terms of women that really, really need the help. But I really hope that over time, and I think it will, everything will get cheaper and more affordable
It
and
will.
be able to become the
Absolutely.
norm for women
Yeah.
truly understanding their health better at
And
home.
definitely, and that is actually one of the reasons again that we're doing what we're doing, because if we can help these companies get their message to their intended market, yes, some of them will come out and they look at, there's one that we've recently just purchased ourselves. It's £400. It's too expensive. It could be an absolute game changer for what is a really debilitating condition, but a lot of people won't be able to afford it. But I also know they're looking at NHS accelerators. And if the NHS, it could take 3 years. I don't know how long it takes, a year, 3 years, I don't know. But there's a lot of red tape in the NHS and there's a limited amount of cash. But if they can get through that NHS accelerator, then it becomes potentially free, and which could be absolutely game changing for a lot of women. In the interim, if the women that can afford it buy it and people like ourselves promote it
Yeah.
and say, guys, talk about it, demand it, speak to a doctor about it, say, I want this as long as it's got some medical or clinical efficacy. And that is another really big thing as well. There's a lot of solutions and products out there that come out with no independent research. There's no clinical efficacy. And that can be challenging, especially for some areas like menopause. We don't have the years of history to build up something. And if something works for you and it's not dangerous for you, then take it. I mean, we're not going to stand in judgment of anyone doing anything. We've all taken supplements. Not sure, but we think it feels right. Maybe it's a placebo effect. I don't know. Maybe it is genuinely working, but you have to be very, very careful with what you do take. And a lot of companies say we do research, but what they don't state is it's independent research that is being clinically verified. So there's peer review is what you're looking for.
I was going to say, what should women be looking for if they're looking at because I see so many supplements advertised. So it's that looking for that peer reviewed.
Looking for the peer review. Google everything. So if something comes up, Google it. Look at reviews of people already, that have already tried it or taken it or assessed it. Look at what's in the supplement. I see this and it really annoys me. We very often say clinically proven. And what they'll say is, so you maybe have a gel supplement. And actually today I read there was an issue with potential gel around gel supplements. So it's Googling all the time. But, you might have something like magnesium, iron, vitamin D, calcium in a product as a part of that product. So there'll be 10 things in that product, and they're pitching it as this is the supplement you want to take. Calcium or vitamin D or iron are clinically proven to be effective. Generally, for people who have deficiencies in those areas, I mean, vitamin D is pretty much everybody in the UK has got deficient, especially in Scotland, are deficient in vitamin D. So it's something we really probably all should take. But, you should take it. If you are going to take it, there are clinically and medically researched levels, how many milligrams or whatever it's called, that you should take of that supplement per day to get the maximum benefit. Assuming you're not deficient. If you are deficient, a doctor can say, well, actually, you need to take double of that. But when you look at these supplements and they're a mix of things, if it doesn't tell you how much is in it, that's a big red flag to me. Because yes, they can say clinically researched, but what they're not saying is their product is clinically researched. It's a bit of it's equivalent of whatever medical greenwashing, if you like, blue washing, I don't know what you call it. It's essentially marketing lies.
Yeah.
They're saying clinically researched, their product isn't, but the ingredients might be. But you need to understand how much, what the dosage of each ingredient is. Also, if there's loads of fillers, if there's loads of stuff that you don't recognise, you need to Google everything, because a lot of times they pack it full of stuff that it just doesn't do anything to your body. In some instances, can be not good for your body. A lot of things like gummies, not all of them, but a lot of them have sugar
Mhm.
or a sugar artificial sweetener in it. You don't need that. Find one that doesn't have it. So if you want, there are some great supplements out there, but research, 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 because you're paying for it, so you should research it.
Yeah, I think sometimes the marketing's phenomenal in these things. I've seen so
Yeah.
many things that are kind of like, fix all your period problems, you like your period pain or if you've got PMDD, like this'll help, and the supplements. And then I look at the back and I'm like, it's tiny amounts of the things that are supposed to help. So yeah, I guess
It's never
that
going to make any impact, and what you
yeah,
might get is a bit of a placebo effect,
yeah,
which will eventually wear off, and then you've just made a big dent in your bank account, and that's all you've
absolutely.
achieved. But it is a multi-billion-pound industry,
Yeah,
multi-billion-pound industry. So that's why they have the marketing budgets,
yeah,
and because we all want a quick fix.
yeah,
We want the pill. And I can't blame anybody for wanting a pill, wanting an injection. You can't blame anybody. Everybody's knackered and
just
struggling,
yeah,
and it's hard to really, when you're focusing on 20 different things in your life, focusing on your health becomes quite a challenge.
yeah,
I think, again, that's why we want to try and say to women, it is difficult, but do you want to spend your latter years in poor health, or do you want to try and make a change now that gives you the opportunity to live longer in better health? You
yeah.
know?
Yeah, and health's so foundational. When it goes, it's kind of we all muster through and struggle through, and then as soon as that goes,
Yeah.
that's it. Like nothing else matters. But you just don't want to get to the point where it kind of goes to the extreme.
And you don't tend to think about it until something does go as well. In your
Absolutely.
20s and 30s, your teens, 20s, 30s, even in your 40s, you feel a wee bit invincible,
Yeah,
and you look at other people and go, oh, I don't have that problem. I don't have that problem. And then all of a sudden you do, and you think, wait a minute. And there's nothing worse to think that you might have contributed to that problem, not through any fault of your own, but because you just didn't know to ask questions, to not do. And we look at the big players. I don't smoke. I don't take drugs. I don't drink that much. I do a bit of exercise. I don't eat cakes every day. And we think that's enough. And it's
yeah,
not. It
yeah,
really is not. We need to get way more involved with our bodies and understand them, because they're absolutely incredible. Women's bodies are incredible, absolutely amazing. We have a womb that basically injures itself and bleeds every single month, and miraculously, without scarring, heals itself.
yeah,
It's an incredible item, you know? It's unbelievable, but we just tend to think of our womb as something that carries babies and that's it.
yeah. So good
Our
point.
vagina is something for things to go in and stuff to come out. That's it. It's a highway. That's all it is. That's what we're taught. And it's not. It's way, way, way more important. There's a link between your gut and your vagina. There's a link between your vagina, obviously, and your brain's hormones. There's a link to everything, and we need to understand it. It's not just where your vagina is just not a missing penis. And that might be the phrase I'll live by the rest of my life. It's not your vagina either, it's your vulva. Again,
Exactly.
I had a conversation with my other half recently and said to him, we said the word vagina, and I went, and it's a vulva. And he went, what do you mean? And it's not my vagina, that's my vulva. Inside is my vagina. And you can see him going, she's off again. It's like,
I only learned that, like, I think a few years ago, genuinely.
we know that as a term. It's like calling your penis your foreskin.
Yeah. It's just,
It's just wrong.
wild. I am completely on a tangent. I also learned this whole thing about virginity and breaking the hymen. Complete falsehood. Not true. We don't have one. It doesn't exist. You do, but it stretches. It doesn't break.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was just it's crazy the things that we're just taught,
Things that we don't know.
leave and yeah. And I'm only learning this in my 30s. It's crazy.
Well, the fact that, you know, as young girls coming through school, getting their first period, your period, all you were ever taught about your period was how to stop it showing.
Yeah.
That's all we're ever taught about period. You're a woman now. What does that even mean? I was a woman beforehand, thanks very much. But somehow I'm a woman because I'm bleeding. It's not saying you can have a baby, which actually isn't necessarily the case. When you bleed, it isn't that you were infertile and all of a sudden you're fertile. That's not how it works. But also, that's all we were taught about. You can have a baby now, but you're not allowed to have sex, obviously, because you're far too young. But you can have a baby, and here's how you stop it. Stop anybody seeing it.
Yeah.
Here's how you hide it from the general public. Here's some drugs because it's going to hurt.
And you know, one of the most refreshing conversations we've had, which shows how much of details conversations that we have outside of this, is about what comes out when you have your period.
Oh my God.
Everyone just thinks it's this beautiful, clean red blood. And that is not true. So let's just all stop thinking if that's not, if we're getting other things that aren't just pure red blood, that is bad. Like, it's just all this.
Honestly, just wait till you get to perimenopause as well. It's like you've got a bunch of snails having an orgy. It's a pride orgy because there's a range of colours. The things that come out your vagina when you're in perimenopause, literally, you go to the toilet and you think, what the hell is that? Then you go to the toilet an hour later and whatever colour you've wiped, it's a different colour. And you think it's like one of these Pantone charts or what they're called. It is literally like, oh my God. And consistencies, obviously with doing the R&D for Bettii as well, we do have some female engineers, but we've got a lot of male engineers, and trying to teach them about blood clots.
Yeah.
They had an idea of what a blood clot was, and I'm like, no, you really don't understand what a blood clot is. They thought, blood was, they knew it was red, or, it can be deeper blood, because we all know it's arterial blood or venous blood that can be slightly different colors. No, no. You can have almost black blood, you can have bright pink, huge range of colors, and that can happen in one day. And even talking to somebody recently, she didn't know women bled. I know that sounds like a strange thing. She has clot. Her blood is clot. Her periods are clotted. So she didn't I said, well, surely you must have thought, well, what's a tampon about? Or what comes out in your pad? She said, no, I just thought a tampon was like a plug. It stopped the clots coming out, not absorb the blood. And I thought, oh my God, and she said, it's only through you having conversation with you and being more exposed to period blood that I've realised other women have runny blood.
Yeah.
It's insane that you don't know that. I also remember the first time I was ever introduced to a tampon, I was in primary school, a nurse came in, she ushered, all the boys got taken away, all the girls got moved into this room. I must have been about 9 years old. And she got a glass of water, stuck it on the table. She got a tampon. She went, this is what you're going to use when you start to bleed. She shoved it in the water. It soaked up all the water, and she picked up the glass with the tampon thing. And I remember at that point thinking, nope, that is not to happen. thanks very much. I mean, it did eventually, but I was like, I just had visions of women being pulled around like popsicles with a tampon string. Like, what is this? It's
Oh,
completely insane. But
crazy, isn't it?
women also need to know so much more about their bodies in order to be the next generation of innovators.
The next generation of innovators, and for me, to educate their own children in a different way to how
Absolutely.
we were educated. That I feel like that's so important. I think a lot. I sometimes think the reason I have such bad periods is because genuinely I got brought up to think it's going to be horrendous and it's going to be painful because my mum and my sisters both went through so much pain, and it's kind of like
Yes.
that instilled into me of how
It
it's
is.
going to
Women
be.
just have pain. That's what it is. You know, that's what you're
Yeah,
told, and you just get on with it. And actually, we need to teach women to teach their children and beyond, not just because we need to know more about our bodies, we need to be sympathetic and empathetic to other women. So I remember in my 20s speaking to a woman, she was complaining about her period pain, me thinking, what are you talking about? It's not that bad. You know, and I used to have really bad periods, but then other days it wasn't too bad. And I'm thinking, "Oh, she seems to be a bit going on a bit much." But I didn't know her circumstance. And we need to understand, so likes of people like PMDD, which is a particular passion of mine, very few people know what PMDD is. And it's so debilitating. And it has direct links to suicidal ideation and attempted suicide. It's a horrendous position for many, many women to be in, but so few women know what PMDD. You know, and if you don't know about it and somebody in your workplace for a week, a month is having horrendous time,
absolutely.
you're not going to be sympathetic or empathetic, especially if they're part of you. Let's be realistic, they're part of your team and they're not performing, and you're having to take on all their work and you're knackered and you don't understand it. It's difficult for you to, and you know, you want to have time off and you can't because this person is in a really difficult place. So we need to learn about ourselves and learn about what you don't have. We're terrible at saying, I've not experienced that, therefore it doesn't
Doesn't
exist.
exist,
Yes,
100%. Yeah,
and it
I
does.
felt that firsthand. I remember I actually used to just say I had migraines because
Yeah,
I felt like if I told people that I was off with period pain, it was like a bit of a cop out, and a lot of women don't really understand how debilitating period pain can be because for them, they don't have it or they have a little bit and they're like,
exactly,
"It's fine."
exactly.
So I couldn't agree more. But if we look forward to what you want to achieve with Betty, what would that look like for you? In a few sentences, if what you want to achieve and what you want the future to look like in terms of women's health, what would you like Betty to have achieved in 5, 10 years' time?
I think it's funny because people do ask you that question and they even ask it about yourself. And I'm very much of the opinion that as long as you keep an open mind and you constantly search for gaps that fit with your aim and your ethos, we don't know what we don't know. There's a lot of things coming through. There's a lot of innovations. There's a lot of potential. There's gaps that we don't really look at the moment that will appear to us. And I want to be a company that stays on the ball so that we can recognize areas that we can potentially plug. And I'm constantly looking and thinking and looking and thinking, what can we do? We are a company, we have to monetize some things, but I want to be a company that can be successful, generate wealth to allow us to have the finances to look at the other gaps that aren't necessarily wealth generating, to make an impact. It is all about education for me, education awareness. I would eventually like to be in a position where companies who did come through with new innovations, new products, new services, came to us and said, "Could you help promote that?" To the women who are your followers. Can you get the word out? Can you help us get the word out? Can you ask them if this works for them? Can you get feedback? As well as having a suite of our own products. We want to get Bettii the washer in every toilet that is out there. It is somebody, male person recently said it was wrong for me to say that having the ability to wash a period product in a public place was not a human right. And I was like, "No, I think you're wrong. I think you'll find it's a very basic human right, the ability to wash a period product that you choose to use to manage your periods." So I want it to be no sanitary bins are law. I think
Yep.
Bettii, whether it's Bettii or whether it's another one that comes through, because there's 1.8 billion women have periods, there's plenty of space for a lot of us. We want to be market leader, obviously, and we think we've got a fantastic product. So we want to be in every toilet that we possibly can so that a woman can leave the house and not have to think. And I want that to be a starter for 10. What's the next product, the next product, the next product? And what can we use that wealth that we will create to do good in women's health, the
Yeah.
women's health sector. So that's where I want to be. Well, that's 5, 10, or 20 years' time.
Yeah.
And
That's
it's
so
exciting actually because I don't know what's going to come through.
I was going to say it's really exciting because if you even think about sanitary bins, like how old are like that's we're not innovated since sanitary bins, like
No,
that's crazy, you know?
no,
Like
we haven't. And I think that's actually, it was a lovely conversation I had with somebody recently who said, what I love about yours is it's not a me too. It's not just an adaptation of something that currently exists. It's a brand new product because we saw a gap. And other people have seen that gap as well, but thought, oh, there's no money in that. There's no way we can do it. Society has changed. Companies have changed. They realize that there's a lot of equity in understanding your customers, understanding your employees, and fulfilling basic toilet needs. You know, and there's a lot that we should be doing as society for women and for men as well. Obviously, our focus is on women. I'll tell you actually what I would like to do eventually. This is one personal dream. I would love to build a massive big museum all about women's bodies.
wow.
Every aspect of women's bodies, the conditions that they suffer from mostly, not necessarily even just exclusively, but mostly, about the stages that we go through, about what changes happen to your body, about redefining what's normal. And what we always say is we have a massive big vulva at the beginning, and you've got to find the clitoris to get in. That's what we're going to do. And eventually, next door, we'll have one on men's bodies.
Yeah. Because
I'd
it's
love it.
and I always I feel like I always have to caveat because I'm so passionate about women's health and women's access to finance is my other kind of passion
Yes.
from my previous role. I feel like I always have to caveat, but like I love men. Men are amazing. Like it's not just because we want to do better for women doesn't mean that we want less for men.
And we need men involved to understand our bodies, and we need to be empathetic towards the things that they go through because society is changing.
Yeah.
Let's face it, women have had the rough end of the deal for a very long time. So let's focus. We are women. Let's focus on that first. The other thing, at the back of my museum, there will be all the new products. I'd even like to eventually one day you'll get to the point where you just get women in a room and then we just look at all the new products that go through and we vote on them or we talk about them. Even when you do digitally, you have everybody online and we're just showcasing product after product after product, things that are coming through, things that might get to us, might take 2, 3 years to get to us. But if women know that something is potentially coming, that gives us hope, and it gives those companies potentially feedback as well. And then new products that come in, let's find a platform that we just tell everyone about
And
them.
about that, so and women can get access to things that are actually genuinely.
Exactly. Exactly. The companies have the evidence to take to the NHS to say there's a demand. Can we get it in the NHS? People can get them now if they can afford them, you know?
Yeah,
So,
great.
yeah,
Final question, Elaine. What does making it matter mean to you?
it's probably going to be a strange answer. I always used to think I would have liked to have been an architect. So I'd like to have built something. And we went to see the Taj Mahal a few years ago and I thought, oh, I wish I'd built that.
Well, you're talking about museums, so maybe it's just
And I think that's what's driving it. I think I want something permanent. Maybe that's an ego thing. I don't know. I don't have kids, so maybe it's an ego thing to leave something behind. But I've always had a desire. I've always wanted to help people without that sounding a bit. I think sometimes you're told if women are kind and empathetic, that equals weak. It's rubbish, absolute rubbish. It's complete opposite. But I think being a human is difficult. Being a woman is even more difficult. And especially being a human and being a woman today, there's so many things that point to make it easier, and it's quite the opposite. We've got so many decisions, and it's just hard. So I think on that journey, I think women are fantastic. I meet amazing women every single day, and they're carrying an awful lot every single day as well. So I think if in some way, if I leave my mark, or if making it matter, is that I make it easier for a woman to live her life every single day and somehow contribute to her finding joy or happiness or just not being in pain or discomfort, or having the ability just to speak up and say, actually, enough's enough. I think I need something else now. And that opens up a million avenues to you. So, yeah, if we can help in some small way, shape, or form and create a museum I can leave behind, and everybody goes, oh, wasn't she marvelous? That would be great.
oh, thank you so much, Lane. On your honesty, your ability to talk about this subject with no holds barred and
Yeah, I
just
get rolled out to say the word vagina in a full lot. It still amuses me.
is what we need, in my opinion. Much more of that. Break down the taboo, allow women to talk openly and honestly about themselves and their bodies and the pain that they're in
Definitely.
is going to make all the difference. So just thank you so much. And I'm so excited to watch Betty and see the journey.
Absolutely. And thank you for asking me to come on and talk to me as well.
Been
And
a
let me
joy.
say the word vagina and various other things on a regular basis. Oh,
Thank you so
brilliant.
much.
All right. Thank you.